Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for clicking. Please leave a like and subscribe, it really helps. Marie Laveau. Now, we're on to sort of the fourth part now, I guess, and we're looking at her as a devout Catholic, but we're also going to go on to the saffron scourge as well. This is not so bad, this part. Definitely easier than the other ones. It's not as dreadful, but viewer listen discretion is advised. Only listen if you're not going to be triggered or affected by any of what I am telling, because it is going to bring in the yellow fever and such, and some people can find that distressing. I personally love history and I love knowing about it, so if you want to learn about things like that, it's great, but listener discretion is advised. I won't say viewers because I don't really put anything onto view, do I? That'd be daft. So Marie was known to have such a warm heart. She was very tender in nature. She never would refuse a summons from a suffering, no matter how bad or how dangerous the disease or the person was said to be. She laboured faithfully and earned long life friends. During the cholera and the yellow fever epidemics, she proved herself to be a noble woman, going from patient to patient, straight to the next and to the next and to the next, administering to each of their needs, saving many from death. June 21st, 1821, an article wrote about Marie and her work, known by the Catholics as corporal works of mercy, charitable actions, the fact that she was helping neighbours, she was feeding the hungry, giving drink to those that needed drink, that were thirsty, clothing the naked, sheltering the homeless, and visiting the sick, burying the dead, and even visiting the imprisoned. Those principles derived from the teachings of Jesus. Basically, treat others as if they were Christ in disguise. And Marie Laveau lived in accordance of the works of mercy. She lived her life in full service to her community, and she engaged in core principles in her life's work. She's absolutely on record for nursing patients through the yellow fever, through the cholera, during the city's epidemics. And she provided food, housing for the poor. She sponsored education for the children and even posted bond for women accused of petty crimes. She visited condemned prisoners. She set up altars inside those prisons and she prayed with them, especially during their final hours. She also offered the use of family tombs. Yeah, I can't remember, I think it's one of the burial sites anyway, just one alone. She has strangers there because they couldn't afford a burial site. And there are 84 people at the site one. There's 84 people buried. They're at rest there in that tomb. But only 25 of those buried there, verified, are assumed to be family members. The rest that are buried there are people that she allowed to be buried there because they had nowhere else. Excuse me. I think that's quite heartwarming, isn't it? It's not done so much now, it's kept for family, but even back then, when you think about it, not having somewhere to place your family member's soul to rest, and she gave them that. There's 84 people buried in a Laveau tomb. Only 25 of them are family, or at least reported to be family members. I think that's pretty awesome. I'm sorry, I just do. I really do. Father Antoine, by the way, he also sort of went about the workings with Marie. He was very charitable and he did the work along the side of the Catholic Church. He followed her and he remembered her very well, and he definitely bonded with Marie. Father Pierre Antoine, that's his name. And they go back as well. He and Maria, they ministered together to the sick and the incarcerated. He shared her dedication, but their relationship began when Marie was baptized by him. He baptized her. He was an important figure in her life, and he also married her. It's not often we get that where the same priest or vicar is there throughout the life, actually. It's round here, it's quite rare anyway. Maybe in other parts it's not so rare, but it is here. He likely did school Marie, though, in the principles of the Catholic faith. They even had a deal that Marie could do ritual work behind the church every Sunday. So after Mass on a Sunday in St. Anthony's Garden, Marie performed light rituals behind the St. Louis Cathedral. She promised rituals to her following, and obviously they would come to church for Mass. So the father agreed because at the end of the day he was getting more people in church attending Mass. Now, other voodoo leaders discouraged their followers from going to a Catholic church. Marie entwined the two. And Father Antoine, he also did not mind this. They binded the two together. I do believe that Father Antoine was at St. Louis Cathedral for more than 40 years altogether. He did have a break in between, but his time there was more than 40 years, which is a long time. Though Marie was described as an extremely devout Catholic, she definitely likely had voodoo in her lineage, passed through the women in her family. This is what happens with hoodoo, voodoo, witchcraft, the real stuff. The real stuff is passed on from family to family. There are things, for example, that I've got that I show very few people, and they think, I'm sure they think that they want to see it, but trust me, they don't. You don't need to see it because it's family business, if you get what I mean. And that is the difference with the real side of the witchcraft and the hoodoo and the voodoo is it is passed from family to family. It is not shared publicly. You might think it is. You might be excited like, oh, wow, look at this. The real deal? Mm-mm. Nope. It's just not. It's not. It's classed as family business. It's not to be broadcast everywhere, is it? That it just wouldn't work like that, would it? She was extremely well conjured in this kind of work, so she could do conjuring work. She was no stranger, though, to also having to cloak that conjuring work. So we have Papa Legbois. Papa Legbois is the key opener. He is the one that must be invoked in a voodoo ritual before invoking any others because he is the path holder. He directs, he opens paths, he closes paths. But he was actually called, there was a few different names for him, but I do know that it was Papa Limba. Papa Limba, which, is different. And Mardi Gras, which is a celebration that everybody knows, you will hear people calling Laba, Laba. You'll hear it in the Mardi Gras. Well, that's Papa Legbois' actual part of his name and how he was called, and unfortunately, they shout this name, and he is the opener of roads, and he's conjured up, and they shout this name, and they don't actually realise what that name truly means. They don't know the roots of that name and how important it is. So that's something else to understand, that when you hear something like that as well, maybe the person that's using it doesn't fully appreciate and understand where it's coming from because it's been changed over time. People have changed it over time, and to them it may mean something completely different. They may not have any idea what they're actually saying, or they may have an idea of something new rather than what it actually is. So bear in mind when you see Mardi Gras and you hear that, that's Papa Legbo. She was a very successful nurse, Marie. And I know when I say nurse, you think of the nurses that we see in hospitals and things, but that wasn't the case back then, remember. There wasn't nurses like that. She would care, she would nurse so many, and she would use her skill and her knowledge in order to make them better. As soon as she was called upon by the sick, she absolutely responded very promptly, and this gave her extreme popularity and good standing. And then, of course, you have the other side, where it wasn't seen as being a healer, but she was seen as doing bad magic, and they dreaded her, they feared her, and she had unnatural skills, blah blah blah. You can read the Daily Pickelude in 1881, and that states 67 yellow summers arrived in New Orleans between the years 1796 and 1905. And obviously, this was called the yellow fever. However, it was also called yellow jack, black vomit, and the saffron scourge. And this plagued the city. And during this particular time, no one knew how it spread. No one had any idea, so they would flee, and the others would succumb to the illness, and they were burned and they were buried. Thousands of people reportedly died, apparently stacked one upon the other in cemeteries. The stench of death permeating the streets. And at some point, people were dying faster than graves could be dug. This is where the saying comes, you'll be digging your own grave. It comes from the yellow fever, from the saffron scourge, because people were dying faster than the graves could be dug. Hence why we have, you'll be digging your own grave. If we take out these diseases, though, there are definitely reports out there that state, without disease, New Orleans was reported as being unsanitary. It was littered, it had rats, roaches, dead animals, and sewerage was being put into the Mississippi River, and that was people's source of drinking water. So obviously, disease spread. New Orleans saw more than a fair share of diseases in addition to just the yellow fever. There was smallpox, there was typhus, there was TB, cholera, there was all of that. And then there's the swamps and the lakes and the heat. The heat brings more mosquitoes, and more mosquitoes brings out more bites and more spreading of diseases. The saffron scourge, though, did not kill everyone. Many locals developed a resistance. Treatment for the disease included camphor around the neck, carrion garlic, full body soaks in vinegar, and chewing quan aya, and burning tar at night to purify the air. Physicians that worked behind counters, they used bloodletting, leeching, purging, and mercury consumption. This usually sped up the deaths rather than prevent them or slow them down. In 1812, mercury caused the death of many military men. There were so many deaths due to that, actually, due to their treatment rather than the actual disease. During the public health crisis, Marie Laveau, obviously, she nursed many of the sick, and it's possible her healing methods were more close to the folk variety, that side of healing. The, let's say, herbal teas, soups, massages, baths, prayers, and energy-giving methods. What's important to note, Louisiana Van, which is, by the way, vervain, was grown in the courtyard of the New Orleans pharmacy for medicinal purposes because vervain was found to be a cure for yellow fever. You would express the juice of the leaves, and in small doses it would be given 3 times a day along with an enema, and that was said to be the cure for yellow fever. Even in the most threatening stages, hardly any deaths were reported to occur when vervain was used in this way. I have vervain, I grow vervain, amongst other things. It's actually hung up in my shed right now, drying out, and I'm sure it's ready near enough to, but I have to wear gloves when I'm doing it. So vervain's very important, and I know it's classed as toxic now and is poisonous, but it's not really. It's more about the usage of it. Anything is poisonous, anything is toxic when ingested or taken in at large amounts. Just remember that. When the cholera struck in Louisiana, New Orleans, sorry, mainly central, I think, Marie was credited for saving hundreds of lives. With the cholera came cramps, but by the time these cramps came, it was said that within 10 minutes, if the person wasn't relieved of the cramps, they would die within 10 minutes. And her remedy reportedly did the trick. It was said she made a charm of brimstone, tar, and feathers, lighting it under the noses of those who were sick, and it would immediately alleviate the cramps. Many other women, like Marie, they had exceptional herbal abilities, curative abilities that were successful. The success rate of these women was magical to those inflicted by the diseases. Of course it was. Doctors were envious and rather curious regarding the knowledge of the women and the power of their skills. Soups, the teas, the massages, the oils, the amulet, everything they wanted to know. And these women were of the highest people. They were the best healers. Yet, they were called deadly, secretive. They were demonized. They were held in dread. They were the cause of the work of the devil, of course, you know. And though on the surface the Catholic Church seemed to accept voodoo, underneath they did have the desire to completely wipe out voodoo. Protestants were the same. They did not like voodooists. They thought they were wild and a shame. It was a shameful life. And the Pentecostal rebuke anything that is spiritual or even, voodoo, but anything that's to do with herbs. They believe illness comes from doing herbal practice. This was back then, not now. I don't know so much now. I'm not really looked into it. I'm talking about back then. That is what they believed. But these women, they brought the best remedies. They had amazing knowledge. And the amount of people that they saved was damn amazing. It was good. And Marie had that knowledge and she brought it and she used it and she saved people's lives. For God's sake, she gave people a place to rest when they had nowhere. I mean, I'm just like, wow. Baffled. That's just, what an amazing woman, guys. What an amazing woman to do that. It just touches my heart. I just love it. But the problem is as well, isn't it, is let's look at what's happening right now. When are they going to let the herbalists come in and teach the pharmaceutical people? When are they going to do that? Because, let's be honest, it's probably already on this earth what we need. We probably grow it, or are growing it, or could grow it. But it'll never be looked at, will it? Because then the pharmacies will lose money. And if the pharmacies lose money, the herbalists take over. And they don't want that. They don't want that. I'm sorry, but it's true. There's too much money in the pharmaceutical area. There's just too much. That's why doctors are so easily give out these opioids and things. They want you to be addicted to them because it keeps you coming back for more. That's my theory on that, but that's just my theory and my personal views. Please don't take that as fact. It's just my personal idea of things, is that the more herbal methods are probably the best, and unfortunately they will never be looked into as much as all this other crap they shove in there. But like I say, that's my personal view. Anyway, I'm going to leave this episode here because it's nearly been like 19 minutes and that's long enough. Thank you for listening. I shall see you in the next episode, and many blessings.